The knife slipped. Not from Ria's hand. She never dropped knives. From the cutting board, off the counter edge, clattering against the kitchen tile, with a sound that shouldn't have made her heart stop. But it wasn't the knife that stopped her heart. It was the back door. Splintering inward, Ria Abdo spun around, cleaver still in hand, and the man who fell through her kitchen doorway brought the rain with him. He hit the prep counter on his way down, knocking over her mise en place, scattering her precisely arranged spice jars across the floor. Her first thought was fury. Her second was the blood. It spread through his white shirt like ink through paper, dark, fast, wrong. His breathing was wrong too shallow, too fast. The sound of someone whose body was making calculations about survival. She should have screamed, should have called the police, should have pointed the cleaver at him and told him to get out of her kitchen. Instead, she took one step closer, and then she saw his face. Something moved through her expression. Fast, complex, gone before anyone could name it. Not fear, not just compassion, something that had no explanation, something she couldn't account for. She looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she grabbed her kitchen towel and pressed it against his side. "Don't bleed on my prep counter," she said. "Do you know how long it took me to sanitize that?" He tried to say something. Couldn't. His eyes found hers, dark, desperate, searching. And then they closed. Ria Abdo knelt beside an unconscious man bleeding on her kitchen floor at midnight. Her restaurant closed, her staff gone home, and something moving through her chest that she refused to name. She pressed harder on the wound. "You have terrible timing," she told him. "Absolutely terrible." But she didn't let go. She didn't know yet that this man, bleeding out on her prep tiles, had spent 11 years as the most feared mind in Seoul's criminal underground. She didn't know that the woman who ordered his destruction was still moving, still watching, still loving him in the dark. But before we understand how a woman who wanted nothing to do with other people's wars ends up at the center of one, you need to know what happened the night this familiar stranger ran out of road. The night a truce offering became a massacre. The night Hee Chan-jun crashed from being the Jonggak group's most trusted mind and became its most wanted ghost. If you want to know how deep this goes, how far a twisted love can curdle into something that burns everything it touches, and why the woman who called the shot still couldn't let her heart let go of him, stay with me. And hit that subscribe button right now, because this story gets darker, more twisted, and more beautifully devastating than you can imagine. Now let's go back to the night it began. The plum wine was the wrong temperature. Hee-chan noticed before he noticed anything else. A small thing. The kind of detail that only matters to someone trained for 11 years to notice every detail. The temperature of a room, the way a person's eyes move when they're deciding how much to lie. He stood at the edge of the Cheongwon estate's inner courtyard, watching the final preparations for the ceremony, and registered the wine temperature and thought, someone is nervous. Which meant he should be nervous too. "You look like you're calculating something," said a voice beside him. He turned. Nari stood a half step away, dressed in deep green silk that caught the lantern light. She was from the Mujin side. Her uncle was their second in command. Her presence tonight, a symbol of the trust this truce was supposed to represent. She had been at every negotiation meeting for 4 months. She had a habit of arriving exactly on time, never early, never late. She had a laugh that she kept mostly contained, like something she'd learned to ration. He had noticed all of these things without intending to. always calculating something," he replied. "I know." She looked out at the courtyard, the assembled men from both organizations, the ceremonial table, the candles that kept guttering in the November wind. "That's what worries me tonight. If even you look uncertain, I'm not uncertain." She glanced at him. "You're not certain either." He didn't answer, because she was right. And in 4 months of watching him read every room they entered together, she had learned to read the one room he couldn't fully control. His own face, in the half-second before he composed it. That was what unsettled him most about Nari. Not her intelligence, though she was sharp. Not her composure, though it matched his own. It was that she had somehow, without making any visible effort, learned him. The way you learn a place you return to, often enough that your body knows it without your mind catching up. "Our children won't grow up the way we did," she said quietly. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the candles. It arrived like something landing. Not a declaration, not a question. Just a thought she'd allowed out of containment. Tentative. A door opened slightly to see if anything came through. He should have said something. There were things that were true, if he could have reached for them. Instead, he said, "The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. You should go to your position." She looked at him for a moment. Something flashed across her face. Patient, private, not quite disappointed. "Yes," she said. "I should."
"Yes, I should."
She moved away through the courtyard. He watched her go and felt the particular weight of a man who has just let something pass that he didn't know how to hold. He turned. Director Lim was standing 3 meters away. He didn't know how long she'd been there. That was the thing about Director Lim. She arrived in spaces without announcing herself, like a change in air pressure. She was dressed immaculately as always, her expression composed as always, her eyes on him with an attention that he had learned over 11 years to read as professional, and had spent the last 2 quietly suspecting was something else entirely. "She's quite taken with you," Director Lim said. She's here for the truce. We all are."
"Of course."
"Of course." She crossed to stand beside him. Close. Closer than the conversation required. "You've done extraordinary work, Hee-chan. 11 years. And tonight is the proof of it. Everything you've built. Everything we've built." Her hand touched his arm. Just briefly. Just once. But her fingers stayed a moment longer than the gesture required. "Whatever happens after tonight, I want you to know, you matter more than this truce ever will. Remember where you belong." He looked at her. Her face was perfectly composed. Her eyes were not. He had 11 years of evidence he had chosen not to examine closely. Evidence he filed away because examining it would have required doing something about it, and she was the architecture of everything his life had become. The ceremony, he said.
"Yes."
"Yes,"
"The ceremony."
she concurred. "The ceremony." She moved away. He stood in the courtyard for 3 seconds, holding something he didn't have a name for yet. Then he took his position. The ceremony began. Incense curled upward through the cold air. Both organizations assembled on opposite sides of the ceremonial table, Jongak on one side, Mujin on the other, decades of bloodshed supposedly ending with this single ritual. Hee-chan stood at the center as Jongak's representative. Across the table, Nari stood with her uncle. Her eyes found his across the table. Just for a moment, he raised the ceremonial cup. Suddenly, the first shot shattered the lantern above the table. The second tore through the courtyard like a verdict. Time didn't freeze. It shattered. One moment there was ceremony and candlelight. The next, there was chaos. Bodies moving, weapons appearing from nowhere, the organized formality of the occasion disintegrating into something ancient and brutal. Both sides scrambling, screaming, the carefully arranged tables overturned. Hee-chan's training took over before his mind caught up. He moved low, away from the center, reading the chaos for pattern. And in reading it, he found the detail that changed everything. The shooters were wearing Jonggak colors. This wasn't Mujin breaking the truce. This was his own organization executing it. He spun toward Nari's position. She was gone. Not fallen, not running. Gone. In the specific way that means something planned, something coordinated, something that required knowing exactly where she would be standing and when. He pushed through the chaos toward where she'd been, reached the spot. Nothing. A knocked-over candle? Her green silk, scarf on the ground, which meant she hadn't gone willingly, which meant hands grabbed him from behind. Two men he didn't recognize, Jonggak, but not his people, not men he'd positioned. They hauled him backward, away from where Nari had been, toward the estate's outer wall. He fought. They were stronger or more prepared, or both. "Director Lim's orders," one of them said against his ear. "You need to disappear." He went very still. Then he twisted, used the stillness as leverage, broke the grip of the one on his left, and drove his elbow into the other's jaw. They were professionals. So was he. He had 11 years of surviving things. He ran. Through the estate gardens, over the outer wall, into the street beyond. The night swallowing him as the sounds of chaos continued behind him. Seoul moved around him indifferently, rain beginning to fall, commuters in taxis and convenience store lights. His shoulder was bleeding. He didn't remember getting hit. That was adrenaline, the way the body hides its damage until you have room to feel it. He kept moving, through Mapo's back streets, away from anything connected to either organization, toward the older part of the district where the buildings crowded together and the street cameras were fewer. He had a contact who owed him a debt large enough to buy silence and a way out of the country. There was a payphone near the Mapo market, old. One of the few remaining. The kind of relic that existed precisely because no one bothered with it anymore. He reached it, but as soon as he lifted the receiver, it rang before he could even dial. He stood in the rain, holding a payphone receiver in a city of 12 million people, and understood that she had eyes everywhere, that she had always had eyes everywhere, that the 11 years he'd spent believing his competence was his own had been 11 years inside her architecture. He answered. "You're hurt," Director Lim said. Her voice was even, controlled, not the voice of a woman who had just ordered the destruction of a peace ceremony and the disappearance of a woman he... "Where is she?" he said. A pause. "Nari is safe. She's being... Don't." Silence. "You need to come in," Director Lim said. "This can be managed. The Mujin will assume it was a rogue element. We can rebuild the... Where is she?" He barked impatiently. "Hee-chan!" Her voice dropped. The composed surface shifted slightly, the way it had in the courtyard when her fingers lingered on his arm. "You have to understand. What you were feeling, what you thought you were feeling, she is not your world. She could never be your world. You belong to something larger than... I'm going to ask you one more time." The silence that followed told him everything the silence needed to tell him. "There's a new operation," Director Lim said finally. Her voice had returned to its professional register. The shift so clean it was its own answer. "I need you back. There's work only you can do. Come in, Hee-chan. Come home." He thought of Nari's scarf on the ground, green silk, discarded like evidence that needed to be left behind. He thought of what Director Lim's fingers on his arm actually meant. 11 years of evidence he had filed away without examining. He thought of the ceremony, the plum wine at the wrong temperature, how someone nervous had arranged everything. "No," he said. The word landed in the silence between them like something final. "Think about it," Director Lim said quietly. "I have." He set the receiver down. He stood in the rain for 3 seconds. Then he moved. They had found the payphone within minutes. She had eyes everywhere. That was established now. That was the fact he was operating inside. His shoulder worsened as the hour passed. He reached the waterfront district as the pain became something he had to manage consciously. His thinking began to soften at the edges. The water was black and vast below the embankment wall. He stood at the edge and looked down and had, for just a moment, the thought that letting go might be easier than what surviving was going to require. Then something else rose up in him, something stubborn and furious that refused to give her the satisfaction, that refused to let her version of this be the last one. He turned away from the water. He walked until Incheon streets replaced Seoul's, until the rain became the only sound, until his legs were making their own separate calculations about how much further they would carry him. Then he smelled it before he saw it. Spices, warmth, something layered and complex that cut through the rain and cold and blood. The smell of a kitchen still alive at midnight, of someone still awake and present in the world, of food made with the kind of attention that means something. He saw the light in the kitchen window. Then he made a decision that had nothing to do with logic. He moved toward it. Now, he was on her floor. When Hee-chan woke, he was in the restaurant's storage room. A cot that had no business being comfortable, a clean bandage wrapped tight around his shoulder. The smell of something warm coming from beyond the door. He lay still for a moment, taking inventory, alive, shoulder-stitched and dressed with a precision that suggested whoever had done it before. The pain was present but managed. She had found something for that too. He sat up slowly. The storage room door opened. Rhea stood in the doorway with a bowl of pepper soup and the expression of a woman who has made a decision she is not yet sure about, but intends to honor anyway. "You're awake," she said. She crossed the room and set the bowl on the small table beside the cot, with the brisk efficiency of someone who feeds people the way other people breathe, automatically, without making a ceremony of it. "Eat," she ordered. "Then you can tell me what I've let into my restaurant." He looked at the bowl, the steam rising from it, the particular smell of it, pepper and crayfish, and something he couldn't name that reminded him of warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. "You could have called the police," he finally spoke. "I could have." She pulled the room's single chair back and sat in it, crossing her arms. "I didn't." "That's a conversation we can have after you've eaten and stopped looking like you might fall over." He picked up the spoon. The soup was extraordinary. He didn't say so immediately. Something told him compliments from a stranger at midnight would land wrong with this woman. But he held the bowl, the way you hold something you didn't know you needed, until it was in your hands. She watched him eat with a wariness that felt specific, not the general suspicion of a woman who'd let a stranger into her space. Something more targeted than that. He noticed, filed it away. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rhea." A pause. "You already know I'm not going to ask yours tonight." Why not? Because you'll lie, and I'd rather not start with that. She looked at him evenly. Eat. He ate. When he set the bowl down, she took it with the same brisk efficiency and moved toward the door. There's a blanket on the shelf, she said. The bathroom is through the kitchen. Go at 3 a.m. when no one's around. In the morning, you tell me what I need to know to understand my own situation. She paused at the door. And you don't touch anything in my kitchen? Understood. She looked at him for a moment, that same unreadable quality in her expression, something she was choosing not to examine. Xavier is coming by tomorrow afternoon, she said. It arrived casually, almost as an afterthought. My boyfriend, so. She left before he could respond. He sat in the storage room in the dark and ate the fact of Xavier, along with the lingering warmth of the soup. He stayed 1 day, then 2, then, somehow, 5. The official reason was the shoulder. Stitched, but not healed, needing monitoring, the kind of wound that punished impatience. Rhea monitored it with the brisk competence of someone who didn't explain how she knew what she knew. The real reason was more complicated than either of them examined. Hee-chan slept in the storage room and spent his waking hours being useful in the ways she allowed. Organizing, repairing, handling the administrative pile on her desk that had been quietly growing for months. She let him. Watched him do it with that specific wariness she never fully put down. By the 3rd day, they'd fallen into rhythms that had no business existing between strangers. He woke early. She arrived earlier. He made coffee, the one kitchen task she permitted him, and left it on the counter before she asked. She cooked staff meal and left a tall portion for him without commenting on it. Xavier didn't come the first afternoon. Hee-chan said nothing. The 2nd day, she mentioned him again. More deliberately this time, the way you shore up a wall you've noticed someone looking at. Xavier usually handles this kind of supplier situation, she said, frowning at a disputed invoice. He's good with confrontational conversations. Where is he? Hee-chan asked. Traveling. She didn't look up. He travels a lot for work. What does he do? A brief pause. Import. Export. Like your father. She looked up then, the particular look of someone recalibrating. My father is none of your business, she said evenly. You have his photograph on the kitchen wall, aligned with the spice rack. It's the first thing you look at when you come in every morning. She held his gaze for a moment. Don't analyze my kitchen, she said, and went back to the invoice. He went back to the supplier files. Xavier didn't come that afternoon either. On the 4th morning, she mentioned him again. Offhand, forced, the kind of casual reference that takes effort. Xavier thinks I work too late, she said, turning peppers on the open flame with her bare fingers, the way she did everything in her kitchen, directly, without flinching. He worries. Hee-chan looked up from the delivery schedule he was reorganizing. He worries from wherever he's traveling? He calls? When did he last call? The pepper turned. The flame hissed. Yesterday, she said. She looked at him over her shoulder. Her expression was the composed one, the one she wore like equipment. You ask a lot of questions for someone who won't tell me his name, she said. You know my name. I know the name you gave me, Junhee-chan, which may or may not be real. It's real. She turned back to the flame. Good for you. He said nothing more, but he noted the way she'd deflected. Not with irritation exactly, with that energy of someone redirecting attention away from something they'd rather not look at directly. He filed it away. The men came on the 6th night. Rhea was cashing out the register. Hee-chan was in the storage room when he heard the shift in the restaurant's atmosphere. The unique quiet that means the wrong kind of people have entered a space. He was out before she clicked the intercom twice. 3 men, positioned with professional deliberateness. Door, window, center. The one in the center stood when he saw Hee-chan emerge from the kitchen. Jun Hee-chan. Not a question. Hee-chan stepped forward, placing himself slightly between them and Rhea. You found me faster than I expected. Director Lim is thorough. The man's eyes moved to Rhea, cold, assessing. Who is she? 1 second. My girlfriend, Hee-chan said. Rhea didn't move, didn't blink. I got out because of her, Hee-chan continued, his voice completely level. Director Lim knew I wanted a different life. She knew why. The man studied Rhea with the flat attention of someone pricing something. Rhea looked back at him the way she looked at difficult customers. Polite, impenetrable, giving nothing. Director Lim will want to meet her, the man said. Arrange it, Hee-chan said. Properly. The man nodded. They left. The restaurant held the silence they left behind. Rhea counted to 10. Then she turned to Hee-chan, and the composure cracked slightly at the edges, just slightly. Your girlfriend? She said. It was the most credible explanation. You decided that in 1 second. Yes, he said simply. And now their director wants to meet me. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Something moved through her expression that she controlled before it arrived fully. Xavier is not going to like this, she said. He looked at her steadily. No, he replied. I imagine he won't. Something shifted in the air between them. Brief. Gone before either of them could name it. If I say yes to this meeting, she said finally, I do everything in my power to protect you. When it's over, I leave. You never have to see me again, he explained immediately. And if I say no, then I leave tonight. You tell them you threw me out. They'll believe you. Rhea looked at her restaurant, the mismatched chairs, the photographs, the kitchen she'd built from nothing. One condition, she said. Name it. You don't lie to me. Whatever I ask, you answer. A pause. Okay, he said. Good. She picked up her keys. Don't touch my knives. The next 2 weeks were the most complicated of Rhea's adult life. Not because of the danger. She had grown up adjacent to certain kinds of risk. What complicated everything was simpler and more inconvenient than danger. She was attracted to him. It arrived not as revelation, but as accumulation. The way he moved through her space with growing ease once she taught him what was allowed. The way he listened, actually listened, not waiting for his turn to speak. The way he looked at her restaurant like it was worth looking at. She managed it the way she managed most inconvenient things. She worked around it. She kept Xavier present in the conversation. Not constantly, not desperately, but consistently. Xavier's opinion on the new menu. Xavier's preference for this neighborhood over that one. Xavier's understanding of her schedule. Xavier hasn't come by, Hee-chan said on the 8th morning. Not an accusation, just an observation, delivered while he was reorganizing her spice inventory at her instruction, as if the thought had simply occurred to him. He's in Lisbon, she said, without looking up from her prep work. How long? He asked quietly. A while? Silence. Then, work. She reached for the gochugaru. He has clients there. Import-export clients. Yes. He said nothing more. Went back to the spice jars. Arranged them with the unhurried attention of a man who was not thinking about what he was thinking about. She kept her eyes on her cutting board and felt, with some irritation, that she had not handled that as smoothly as she intended. On the 10th day, she came into the kitchen at 6 a.m. to find him already there. not in the storage room where he should have been, but at the prep counter, studying her handwritten menu notes with the focused attention he gave everything. She stopped in the doorway. He looked up. "The lamb preparation," he said. "You've changed it 3 times in 2 weeks." "I'm not satisfied with it." "What's wrong with it?" he asked. She came into the kitchen, set down her bag, moved toward the counter. "It's losing something in the spicing. I'm trying to find the balance between the gochujang and the berbere. They want to fight each other." "Can they be made to agree?" She looked at him. "Spices can't agree," she said. "You make them negotiate. You find the note they share, and you build from that." She reached past him for her notebook, closer than necessary, a function of her kitchen's specific geography. "It's like—" She stopped. He was very still. She stepped back, picked up the notebook. "It's like any difficult conversation," she finished. "You find the point of common ground, and you start there." He looked at her for a moment, that quiet, specific attention. "Xavier is a lucky man," he said. She turned to the stove. "Yes," she replied. "He is." She heard nothing in his voice that was mockery. That was almost worse. It would have been easier if he were mocking. The Director Lim meeting was arranged for the following Thursday. They had 4 days to prepare. Hee-chan walked her through everything he knew about Director Lim. Her habits, her methods, the way she read people and used what she found. Rhea listened with the focused attention she gave her most complex recipes. Not memorizing exactly, but absorbing, finding the logic underneath. "She'll look for weakness," he said. "Everyone does," she chimed in. "She's better at finding it than most." "What's my weakness?" Rhea asked, direct, looking at him. He was quiet for a moment. "You care more than you show," he said. "About the restaurant, about the people in it." A pause. "About Xavier." Something moved through her expression. "Yes," she said. "About Xavier? She may use that. Let her try." He looked at her with that steady attention. "You're not afraid of her." "I'm afraid of her," Rhea said. "I'm choosing not to perform it." His expression changed briefly. Small, private. There and gone. "Okay," he said. "Thursday." Director Lim chose the venue herself. A private dining room at the Cheonggang House, a restaurant on the other side of the city. The kind of place with no menu, prices, and a waiting list measured in months. Hee-chan explained on the drive over that this was deliberate. She never met people on their own ground. Meeting at AMBW's table would have given Rhea a home advantage, however small, and Director Lim did not deal in small advantages she could avoid conceding. Rhea had expected a message confirming the reservation. Instead, Director Lim was already seated when they arrived, as if time itself arranged around her convenience. She was younger than Rhea expected, mid-40s. The kind of woman who wore authority the way other women wore fragrance, completely without announcing it. Dark suit, perfect posture, eyes that moved over Rhea with the quick, cataloging attention of someone reading a document they intend to use. They were shown to her table. Hee-chan beside Rhea, Director Lim across from them both, the city lights of the Han River spread out behind her through the floor-to-ceiling glass. "So," Director Lim said. Her eyes moved to Rhea. "This is her." "This is Rhea," Hee-chan said, "my girlfriend." Director Lim looked at Rhea with warm eyes that had nothing warm in them. "You're not what I expected," she said. "Though Hee-chan has always surprised me." "I didn't know I was supposed to meet expectations," Rhea said pleasantly. Something moved at the corner of Director Lim's mouth. "No, I suppose you wouldn't?" She asked questions. Careful, reasonable ones. How they met, How long? What Ria understood about his world. Ria answered with the truth where she could, and deflection where she couldn't. She was better at this than she'd expected to be. Then Director Lim said, "Tell me, you seem like a woman who has her life arranged. Your restaurant, your routines, your—" a pause, delicate, relationships. Ria held her gaze. "I try to. And when someone like Hee-chan arrives and disrupts that arrangement?" Director Lim tilted her head slightly. "What about the life you had before? The people in it?" "The people in my life," Ria said evenly, "understand what I am. They don't need me to explain every disruption. They trust me." She met Director Lim's eyes. "That's what makes them worth keeping." Director Lim looked at her for a long moment, reading, finding edges, the way she would approach any structure she intended to eventually dismantle. Then she looked at Hee-chan. Something passed between them, old and complicated, the weight of 11 years compressed into a single glance. And then Director Lim looked back at Ria, and for just a moment, less than a second, something moved behind the composed surface. Not defeat. Something more dangerous than defeat. The look of a woman filing something away for later. "Enjoy your night," Director Lim said, standing. "I'll be in touch, Hee-chan." She walked out. The restaurant felt different in her absence. Quieter. Heavier. Ria realized her hands were not entirely steady and put them flat on the table. "She knows," Ria said. "She suspects." "She'll use it." He was looking at her. "Your boyfriend," he said. Not a question. Just the name, placed carefully in the air between them. "Yes," she said. "Xavier?" He held her gaze for a moment. Silence. She was quiet on the drive back. He didn't press her. The city moved past the car windows. Bright, indifferent, unaware of the weight sitting between them. It was past midnight when they reached Abdo's table. Ria saw it first. The back door, the one he had broken through weeks ago, and she'd had repaired standing open again. Not broken this time. Unlocked, which was worse. It meant someone with resources. Someone who didn't need to force anything. She pushed it open slowly and stood in the doorway of her dining room and looked at what had been done to it. The tables were untouched. The chairs were untouched. The photographs on the walls were untouched. The kitchen was not. Everything on her prep counters had been swept to the floor. Her spice jars shattered, her ceramic bowls in pieces, her knife roll opened, and the knives driven into the prep counter in a row, handles upright, like a message written in a language that didn't need translation. Her father's photograph on the kitchen wall had been left exactly in place. Whoever did this had understood, with a precise cruelty, exactly what to destroy and exactly what to leave. On the wall beside the pass, written in something dark. Sarangon Soyuda. Love is ownership. Ria stood in her kitchen and looked at it for a long time. Hee-chan stood beside her and said nothing. There was nothing to say. This was Director Lim communicating in her real language. Not the composed voice across a dinner table. Not the careful questions. This was what she actually was. Ria watched. The wall, the words, her knives standing in her counter like a sentence she'd been left to finish herself. Hee-chan stood beside her and said nothing, because there was nothing that fit. He had spent 11 years in rooms full of calculated violence and had learned exactly one response to damage. Understand it, locate its logic, make a plan. Grief was different. Grief had no architecture he knew how to enter. So he did what he knew. She's escalating, he said quietly, because the dinner didn't give her what she wanted. This is her way of saying she can reach anything that matters to you, anytime she chooses. She's sending a message, not making a final move. If we, Hee-chan. He stopped. She had turned to look at him, and he saw it then, her face wet, not dramatically, not with the collapse of someone performing grief, but with the quiet leak of someone who had been holding something too tightly for too long and had finally run out of the strength to keep holding it. She looked at him, and for just a moment, half a second, barely anything, something moved through her expression that was not quite accusation and not quite forgiveness. Something that reached toward him as the source of all of this and then pulled back before it could arrive. Her mouth opened and then closed. The almost blame hung between them, suspended, unable to land. She turned back to her kitchen. "I know," she said, and her voice was flat and quiet and very controlled, which was worse than if she'd shouted. "I know what she's doing. I understand." He stood behind her and felt, for the first time in 11 years, completely without tools. "I'm going to file it," he said. She turned. "What?" "The evidence, all of it, tonight." He held her gaze. "I'm not going to let her stand in your kitchen and write on your walls while I wait for the right moment. There is no right moment. The moment is now." She looked at him for a long beat. Something in the way he said it had reached her. The flatness of it, the finality, the sound of a decision that had already closed. "If you do that," she said carefully, "what happens?" "It becomes too dangerous for her to pursue us. Filing it doesn't destroy her outright. It's leverage, not execution. But exposing that material makes coming after us a liability she can't justify. It buys us room." "And what does it cost you?" He was quiet. "Hee-chan, what does it cost you specifically?" He looked at the wall, at the Korean words she had left for them. "There's an inheritance," he said finally. "Something earned over 11 years inside Jeonggak. A threshold. Once you reach it, what you've accumulated is protected, regardless of how you leave, regardless of what happens after. It's untouchable." He paused. "Unless you expose the organization. Then it's considered a forfeiture." Rhea looked at him. "How much?" she said. "Enough. More than enough." "And you'd lose all of it?" she asked. "Yes." She turned away sharply. Don't do something stupid because of me, because of my—" She stopped. Her hands were pressed flat against the prep counter, fingers spread, the way she grounded herself when things became too much. "This is not your fault. What happened here tonight is not your fault. I want you to understand that I know that. Rhea, I'm not saying you owe me this. I'm not saying—" Her voice caught once, briefly, and then steadied. "I didn't choose to help you because I was owed anything back. I made that choice, and it is mine. Don't throw away 11 years of something because she decided to make a point in my kitchen. It's already decided," he said quietly. She looked at him. "It was decided when I saw your face just now," he said. "Not the kitchen, not the wall. Your face." The silence between them had weight. "I'm not going to keep running a restaurant she can walk into whenever she wants to remind me of that," she said finally. Her voice had settled into something harder than grief, something that had looked at itself and chosen a direction. "I need a real plan, not waiting." He looked at her. "Lagos," he said. "Your family. Somewhere she has no infrastructure, no reach. We go there. But not tonight. Tonight we'd be moving in panic, and panic gets people caught. 2 days. I file what needs filing, you arrange what needs arranging. Then we leave on our terms." Rhea looked at her destroyed kitchen one more time. 2 days, she said. Then Lagos. Then Lagos, he agreed. She salvaged what could be salvaged, called her most trusted staff member, gave instructions, said only that she was taking some time away. She kept moving because moving was the only thing that made the next hour survivable. The night had deepened before she sat still long enough to feel any of it. Hee-chan found her on the back step, looking at the alley where weeks ago he had nearly bled to death finding her. He sat down beside her, didn't say anything at first. "I built this from nothing," she said quietly. 3 years, every chair, every recipe. And she walked in like it was nothing to her, like it cost her nothing to take a knife to it. "It will cost her," he said. "Everything costs eventually, even her." That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be comforting. It was meant to be true. She almost laughed. Almost. "You're terrible at this." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm better at filing evidence than I am at sitting beside someone whose life just got vandalized by a woman I used to call family." Rhea looked at him in the dark. "You didn't do this," she said. "I need you to understand that I know that." "I brought her into your life. You bled on my floor, and I chose to help you. That choice was mine." Her voice was steady. "I don't regret it, even tonight. Even looking at what's left of my kitchen." He looked at her for a long moment. 2 days, he said quietly. "Then we're out of her reach." 2 days, she agreed. Neither of them moved from the step for a long time. The alley was quiet. The rain had stopped sometime that evening without either of them noticing. The 2 days passed in a blur of careful, controlled motion. Hee-chan worked through the night assembling and filing the evidence across channels she couldn't trace back cleanly. Financial regulators, a journalist with a reputation for not being bought, a contact inside the prosecutor's office who owed someone Hee-chan trusted a debt old enough to matter. Rhea packed only what mattered, arranged for a trusted cousin of a supplier to oversee the restaurant's closure, and called no one except the staff member who already knew enough to be trusted with the rest. They left Incheon at 4 a.m, before the city had fully woken up, before anyone watching had fully positioned themselves. 2 bags each. Nothing that couldn't be carried quickly. The first flight took them to Addis Ababa, 11 hours. They sat side by side in the dim cabin with the lights low and the rest of the passengers sleeping around them, and nowhere to go, and nothing between them except the armrest and everything that had been accumulating for 3 weeks. She didn't sleep, neither did he. For the first 2 hours, she kept her eyes on the window. The dark below, the occasional scatter of city lights, the vast nothing of open ocean. She was aware of him the way you are aware of a fire in a small room. Not looking at it directly, but feeling its temperature constantly. "You should sleep," he said quietly, around the 3rd hour. "So should you." "I don't sleep well in transit." "Neither do I." She didn't look at him. "I never have. My father used to say I came out of the womb suspicious of stillness." The corner of his mouth lifted, his gaze gentled. "He sounds like someone worth knowing." "He was." She paused. "He died 4 years ago. Heart. Very sudden. One of those things that doesn't give you time to prepare." She looked at the window. The restaurant was his idea, actually. Not the concept. That was mine. But he was the one who said Incheon. He said I needed somewhere that wasn't Lagos and wasn't London. Somewhere that was entirely my own choosing. Was it? Incheon? Your own choosing. She considered. Yes, eventually. It took about a year to stop feeling like I was proving something and start feeling like I was just living there. He was quiet for a moment. "I've never lived anywhere that felt like my own choosing," he said. "Every city I've been in was for Jongak. Every apartment was strategic. Every neighborhood was chosen for exit routes." He looked at his hands. "I didn't realize until your kitchen that I'd never just been somewhere without it being a position." She looked at him then, couldn't help it. He was looking at his hands still. The cabin light was low and blue, and it made his face look younger than it did in her kitchen. Less composed, like someone who had stopped performing for a moment without noticing. She looked away. "Xavier would hate this," she said. It came out before she could stop it. He turned to look at her. She felt the mistake immediately. She hadn't thought of Xavier in days. He arrived now like a reflex, reaching for itself in a moment of vulnerability. "Would he?" Hee-chan said, quietly, just those two words. "He doesn't really like flying," she said, digging in. "Long flights, especially." A pause. "Rhea?"
My boyfriend
He gets
Xavier
restless. He needs to move around and... Rhea.
Okay.
She stopped.
Okay.
He was looking at her with that steady, specific attention. Not unkind, not pressing, just looking at her. The way he looked at things he intended to understand completely. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." She turned back to the window. They sat in silence for a while. The plane moved through darkness. Somewhere over the horizon, the first pale suggestion of dawn began at the edge of the sky. Not light yet, just the memory of it. "When did you know?" she asked, without turning from the window.
When did you know that Xavier wasn't real?
"The third day," he said. "The way you said he was coming that afternoon. It was too casual. You're not a casual person. When you say things that don't cost you anything, there's a flatness to it." He paused. "That one cost you something, which meant it mattered, which meant it was protecting something." She was quiet. "You've been watching me very carefully," she said. "Yes." "Is that a habit, or is it me specifically?" she asked. He considered the question seriously, the way he considered everything. "Both," he said finally. "I watch everyone carefully, but with you, it stopped being habit somewhere around the fourth day. After that, it was something else." She turned to look at him. In the pale pre-dawn light of the cabin, with the hum of the engines around them, and the other passengers sleeping, and the vast dark outside. She looked at him, and he looked back at her, and the thing that had been accumulating for 3 weeks filled the space between them completely. She turned away first. "We should sleep," she said. Her voice was even. "Yes." She closed her eyes. Didn't sleep. Could feel him beside her. The warmth of him. The steadiness of him. The specific gravity of someone you are trying not to fall toward and failing at. After a while, his breathing slowed. He slept, eventually, which she had not expected. She sat with her eyes closed and listened to him breathe and felt, carefully, terrifyingly, the Xavier wall finish dissolving. Not with drama, just quietly, in the dark, somewhere over Africa, between one breath and the next. She didn't say anything. She just sat with it. The layover in Addis was 4 hours. They moved through Bole Airport in the particular silence of people who have said something important without saying it and are now carrying it carefully. They found coffee, sat across from each other at a small table near the gate. She wrapped her hands around the cup. "I want to tell you something," she said. He waited. "When you first came through my door? When I saw your face?" She looked at her coffee. "Something happened that I couldn't explain. Some recognition that didn't have a reason." She paused. I've been trying to explain it for 3 weeks. I've used Xavier to explain it. I've used the situation to explain it. I've used proximity and danger and circumstance. She looked up at him. None of those are it. He held her gaze. I don't know what it is, she said. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I'm done pretending it isn't there. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said. That's it, okay? I've known it was there since the first morning, he said. I've been waiting for you to stop explaining it away. A flicker crossed his face. Warm, private. I can wait a little longer, until Lagos. She looked at him. You are very annoying, she said. I know. His expression softened. She looked back at her coffee, but the corner of her mouth did something she didn't entirely control. The second flight was shorter, 3 hours. She slept this time, properly, heavily, in the way that only happens when something that has been held tightly finally lets go. When she woke, his jacket was over her shoulders. She looked at it for a moment, then at him. He was awake, looking at nothing, doing what he did, thinking, reading the room, being present in that total quiet way. He noticed her awake, said nothing, just looked at her for a moment with that expression she had spent 3 weeks refusing to name. She pulled the jacket slightly tighter. She didn't give it back. Lagos arrived loud and warm and relentlessly alive. Her grandmother's cousin Emmanuel at the airport, asking no questions, loading their bags, talking continuously about football all the way into the city. They stayed in the family compound in Victoria Island. A large, slightly chaotic house full of extended family who fed them constantly and asked Hee-chan questions in rapid Yoruba before remembering to switch to English. He bore it all with a bemused patience that she found unexpectedly endearing. One evening on the veranda, the extended family's soap opera audible through the open windows, he said, I grew up with no family. This is... He searched for the word. Full. Is that good or bad? It's the best thing I've felt in a long time. She looked at his profile in the Lagos evening light. Hee-chan. Yes. About Xavier, she said. A pause. She looked away. Across the street, a hawker was calling out, his voice warm and unhurried. I was protecting myself, she continued. I know that too. I do that. I build things and then I... She stopped. I find reasons to believe they're not as solid as they are. Xavier was a reason. He was a very consistent reason, he chimed in. Don't. I'm not mocking you. His voice was quiet. I'm telling you, I understood it. I watched you use him, and I understood exactly why, and I waited. He looked at her. Because what's here is real enough to be worth waiting for. She looked at him for a long moment. The Lagos evening around them, warm, full of noise, completely indifferent to the weight of what was being said on this veranda. I'm still scared, she confessed. So am I. But I'm choosing it anyway. He reached over and took her hand. Simple. Careful. She let him. Months after they reached Lagos, the unexpected happened. A stranger came to the gate. A young man, mid-20s, dressed simply but with an unmistakable polish to him. He spoke to the gateman in careful English, gave a name, asked for Hee-chan specifically. Hee-chan came out to meet him. Rhea stood a step behind, close enough to hear. You don't know me, the young man said. My name is Lim Tae-young. Director Lim is my aunt. Hee-chan went very still. I'm not here to threaten you, Tae-young said quickly, hands open, visible. I'm here to deliver something, and a choice. He paused. My aunt is dying. The words landed in the warm Lagos air like something out of place.
Pancreatic cancer, Tae-young said. Stage 4. The doctors are giving her a few months, if that. His expression was carefully composed, the family resemblance showing in exactly that. The discipline of holding a feeling at a controlled distance. She wants to see you. Once. Before the end. I don't believe you, Hee-chan said quietly. I brought records. Tae-young held out a folder. Hee-chan didn't take it. And I brought this. He set a small box on the low wall beside the gate. Hee-chan opened it. Inside was a watch. Old, simple, nothing like the things Director Lim usually surrounded herself with. Hee-chan stared at it for a long moment before something shifted in his face. That was my father's, he said. I thought it was lost. Years ago, before Jungkook. She kept it, Tae-young said. Along with other things. Your old training files, photographs. There's a room in her house. I don't think she knows I've seen it. It's all you. Hee-chan forgot how to speak. His mind stopped where it was. He couldn't reconcile what he'd just heard with the woman he thought he knew. She told me to tell you she's proud, Tae-young said, quieter now. For choosing this. For building something real. She said she wishes she'd had the courage to choose it herself once. He stepped back toward the street. Whether you come or not, she won't trouble you again. There isn't time left for that anymore. Then he was gone. Hee-chan stood at the gate holding his father's watch, and Rhea watched something move through him that she had never seen before. Not fear, not guardedness. Grief arriving somewhere it had been waiting a long time to be let in. Do you want to go? Rhea asked finally. I don't know. She tried to destroy you. She destroyed my kitchen. She took Nari from you in the worst way a person can take someone. I know. And she's dying. I know that too. He looked at the watch in his hand. I don't owe her anything. No, Rhea said. You don't. She took his free hand. But whatever you decide, I'm here for it. He was quiet for a long time. I need to think, he said. Take your time. 3 days later, Director Lim made the choice for them. She arrived at the gate in the late afternoon. Alone. No driver waiting at the curb, no presence trailing behind her. Just a woman who had once filled every room she entered, now small inside a white dress that hung loose on a frame that had clearly lost weight it could not afford to lose. Rhea answered the gate. For a long moment, the two women only looked at each other. So you did it, Director Lim said. Her English was precise even now, even diminished. He really did choose you. I didn't win anything, Rhea said. I just fed a bleeding stranger and didn't stop. Something that might have been a smile moved across Director Lim's face. That's everything. She looked past Rhea to where Hee-chan stood frozen in the doorway. I couldn't leave this world without seeing you once more, she said, switching to Korean, her voice dropping into something Rhea had never heard from her before. Soft, unguarded, the voice underneath 11 years of composed authority. And to tell you I'm sorry. For the trafficking operation. For Nari. For making you into something you never asked to become. For loving you in ways that wounded instead of protected. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. For not being brave enough to release you when I should have. Hee-chan said nothing. Couldn't. Director Lim reached into the small bag at her side. Rhea tensed instinctively, but what came out was only an envelope. The Jungkook group is dissolving, she said. I've arranged it. What remains legitimate continues under new ownership. The rest? She shrugged, a small motion that seemed to cost her something. The rest ends with me. She set the envelope on the wall beside the gate. property, accounts, everything that's mine to give. Your inheritance, Hee-chan. More than you will ever need. Use it to build something with her. Something I never had the courage to build for myself. She began to turn. Wait! Hee-chan's voice cracked. Why now? She looked back at him, her eyes bright in a way she would not allow to fall further than that. Because I finally understood what Nari knew, what this woman beside you knows. A pause. Love isn't supposed to be ownership. It's supposed to be the thing that sets a person free. I loved you long enough, badly enough, to finally understand the difference. I'm sorry it took me this long to let you fly. She bowed, low, formal, final. Be well, Hee-chana. Be everything I always knew you could become. Then she turned and walked away, smaller with every step, until the Lagos street swallowed her completely. Hee-chan stood at the gate with tears he made no attempt to hide. Rhea stepped behind him and wrapped her arms around him, and they stayed there together until Director Lim had long since disappeared. 1 year later, AMBW's Table Lagos occupied a narrow building in Lekki Phase 1. Mismatched chairs, photographs on the walls, food that made people sit very still for a moment after the first bite. Same spirit. New city, new menu, Korean fermentation techniques in West African ingredients, Lebanese spicing in Korean dishes, a menu that changed weekly and was always fully reserved. Hee-chan handled the finances, the legitimate kind, building access to funding structures for small businesses in the area, using everything the Jonggak Group had taught him to build something that didn't require the Jonggak Group. He was good at it. On a Sunday morning before service, Rhea was in her kitchen making masabaha. Her father's recipe, the one for difficult mornings and good ones alike. When he came in from the courtyard with vegetables from the garden they'd started, he set them on the counter, looked at her face. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." He came to stand beside her and looked over her shoulder at the pot. "It smells the same," he said, "as that night. It's the same recipe." "It's the first thing I thought," he said, "when I smelled your kitchen that night. That something smelled like a place I wanted to be." He paused. "I didn't know then that the place was you." Rhea set down the spoon. She turned to face him. In the Lagos morning light, in her kitchen, their kitchen now. She looked at this man who had fallen through her back door bleeding and rearranged everything without intending to. "You still owe me a new mise en place," she said. "It's in the storeroom. I bought it last week." "And the back door in Incheon?" "Handled." She looked at him. "You know what Xavier would say about all of this?" He looked at her, waiting. "Nothing," she laughed. "Because Xavier never had any opinions?" His face loosened as a gentle smile touched his mouth. "Rest in peace, Xavier," he teased. She turned back to the stove, but she was smiling. "Set the table. Service starts in an hour." He went to set the table, and in the kitchen that smelled of chickpea and lemon, and something that had quietly become home, Rhea AMBW stirred her father's recipe and listened to Lagos waking up outside and felt, carefully, fully, without the protection of invented boyfriends or professional distance or walls she'd built and named, happy. The rain doesn't wash everything away. But sometimes you stop needing it to. Sometimes the life you build after damage is more yours than anything you had before. More deliberate, more chosen, more real. She thought she wanted nothing to do with other people's wars. Turns out she just needed the right person to make the surviving worth it. He walked through her door bleeding
and she knelt down, and the rest is something she's still writing. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and consider liking this video as well, because the stories on this channel do not let go easily, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Drop a comment below. From the very first night, Rhea handed him that bowl of pepper soup. Did you already know she was lying about Xavier? Or did it take longer? I read every single one. Thank you for being here for this one. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next story. Bye.